So as the title said, this call for violence thing has been raging in the news for the past couple of days. So I asked ChatGPT, what Democrats have called for violence? Just a random question. And it says, there isn't an exhaustive list of Democrats who have specifically called for violence, as direct calls for violence are rare among mainstream politicians. However, there have been several instances where comments by Democrat politicians have been interpreted or criticized as advocating for violence, for confrontational tactics. In some cases, have been seen by opponents as promoting violence or harassment. And here are some examples. 2018, Maxine Waters encouraged her supporters to confront Trump administration officials in public spaces, stating that if you see anybody from the cabinet in a restaurant or a department store or a gasoline station, you get out. You create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome here anymore. She tried to clean that up by saying she was advocating for nonviolent. That was actor to face. Fact. In 2020, Ayanna Pressley, Democrat from Massachusetts, said that there should be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives. She did not directly call for violence, but some critics interpreted her words as encouragement for violent protests and civil unrest. Cynthia Johnson of Michigan in 2020. Cynthia Johnson posted a video on social media about receiving threats from Trump supporters. In it, she called for her soldiers to make them pay, which some have to say are interpreting as inciting violence. Yeah, of course it is. She later clarified she was speaking metaphorically and did not intend to. Tim Kaine, former vice president candidate. So he's on the list. Fighting the streets against the Trump administration. Although he later clarified he was speaking figuratively about political opposition and activism. Oh, the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer. In 2020, he made controversial statements saying, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have unleashed a world when you will pay the price. Schumer later clarified. Eric Holder, 2018. Eric Holder said it at a campaign event, when they go low, we kick them. He later clarified. Isn't it amazing that after they make all these, they later clarified that he wasn't. Cori Bush, Democrat from Missouri. She's on the list. Cori Bush has been outspoken. Free Palestine. Well, Cori Bush, her own people, her own constituents voted her out, so she's gone. Nancy Pelosi's on the list. In 2020, she said, I just don't know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be. Meanwhile, she did not explicitly call for violence, but her statement was interpreted by some as condoning or encouraging violent protests. And another, Ileana Omar and Rashida Tlaib both have been vocal supporters of protests and relatively to racial justice. While they have not specifically called for violence, some of their rhetoric has been interpreted by opponents as inflammatory and promoting unrest. So this is what ChatGPT said. In summary, while these examples show statements that have been criticized or interpreted as calls for violence, it is important to note that many of these politicians clarified their comments, asserting they were not intended to incite violence. In some cases, they argue that the remarks were meant to encourage civil disobedience, protests, or other forms of political activism rather than violence. So there you go. So that's only a list of 9. And that was asking ChatGPT how many Democrats. The question was, list all the Democrats that have called for violence, right? And apparently, Kamala Harris is on the list. Vice President Kamala Harris, then a senator, faced criticism for expressing support for the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which provided bail funds for people arrested during the 2020 protests against police brutality. Critics argue that some of the people bailed out of the fund were involved in violent activities, though Harris herself did not advocate for violence. So there you go. So let's see. Let's ask ChatGPT another question. Has there been violence against Republicans? Let's just see. Let's see what ChatGPT. Yes, there has been several incidents of violence against Republicans or individuals perceived to be associated with the Republican Party in recent years. These incidents range from physical assaults and threats to more serious attacks. Here are some of the notable examples. Steve Scalise shooting in 2017. In June 2017, Majority Whip Steve Scalise and several others were shot at a baseball field in Virginia during a practice for the annual congressional baseball game. The shooter had expressed strong anti-Republican views and targeted the practice specifically because it involved Republican members of Congress. Scalise was critically injured. Senator Rand Paul in 2017 and 2020 was physically attacked by his neighbor, resulting in 6 broken ribs and other injuries. The assault was reportedly over a dispute unrelated to politics, but some speculate that the political motivations were political motivated. In 2020, Rand Paul and his wife were surrounded by a hostile crowd after leaving the White House after the Republican National Convention, during which they were threatened and verbally harassed, and a police officer escorted them, was attacked. So, yes, what else? Oh, there's more. Hold on. Threats and harassment against GOP officials. Various Republican lawmakers and officials have reported receiving death threats, harassment, and other forms of intimidation. For instance, in 2020, Michigan GOP lawmakers were targeted over the threats during the protests over COVID-19 restrictions, including incidents of a militia, vandalism and attacks. Hold on. Vandalism and attacks. I gotta move the phone. I gotta move the phone so I can move my mouse. So this is all from ChatGPT. Threats and harassment against GOP officials is listed. Vandalism and attacks on GOP offices. Numerous Republican offices and campaign centers have been vandalized or targeted for attacks, including the North Carolina GOP headquarters was firebombed in 2016. In 2020, a number of Republican offices across the country were vandalized, with some incidents involving graffiti, broken windows, blah, blah, blah. Physical assaults on Trump supporters. During and after the 2016 and 2020 elections, there were numerous reports of violence against Trump supporters at rallies or events. These incidents range from physical assaults to mob violence against individuals wearing Make America Great Again hats or other related apparel. 2022 attack on Marjorie Taylor Greene's office was reported multiple incidents of harassment and threats, including attempts to break into her office. 2020 violence against election workers. During the 2020 election period, several Republican election workers and officials reported receiving death threats or experiencing harassment, including state and local officials who had to take security measures or go into hiding. And then recent attacks on pro-life activists in the wake of the Supreme Court decision. Some Republicans or conservative activists and organizations associated with the pro-life movement reported threats, harassment, physical attacks. For example, pregnancy centers often affiliated with conservative or Christian groups were vandalized, and some staff reported violent threats. So there you go. There you go. So no one's making this up, right? Chatgpt. From what I understand, Chatgpt uses like references in its memory banks, right? So later I'm going to ask GPT about mainstream media, right? Let's do mainstream media. What mainstream media people, I don't know what else to refer them to, not celebrities, but I think the list could be exhaustive. From Democrats who have called for violence, to celebrities that have called for violence, to news media that's called for violence. If anybody has seen some of the stuff that MSNBC people have said and have advocated for and agreed with, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's pretty safe to say that safe to say that the Democrats are leading it. I'm also going to do a Republican list to see if any of them have called for violence. So let's see what ChatGPT says. All right, I'm off to work. Everyone take it easy.